I think it's talking.
So, good evening, everyone. I'm Harsha, and this is my thesis. It's about patterns and influence of advertising and print newspaper. And this thesis was advised by Prof. Ponniram. So, the main problem and motivation for this thesis is print media is highly trusted and widely read in India. Uh, Media integrity is really a core point of how democracy is, how people are perceiving information and public discourse. And we also want to understand that if advertising revenue really impacts some of this freedom that publishers use, does it compromise editorial independence in any way? And there's also not a lot of large scale data studies which have been done in this course. As I'll show you, like they have been really limited, talking about one event or maybe a subset of events. So that is the core point. We wanted to understand if this happens. And this is very important because print media is read by over 100 million people in India. And this was in 2020, so I would only assume it keeps on growing. And also, people trust print media way more than digital media. Like 62% of people trust print newspapers over 44% in digital news websites. And also, there is a lot of commercial activity. A lot of people pressurize print media to publish news which favor them. And there's also consolidation of media. A small set of people often hold a large chunk of uh, vested interest in these news sources and often have publishing done positively according to them. And we need to take care of this fragile balance. So print media really depends on advertising revenue, but also they need to not give up on their editorial freedoms, especially in a country like India, where the advertising revenue comes up to about 20% of that total revenue, whereas the global average is about 5%. So, yeah, we can say that Indian newspapers are really dependent on advertising revenue. So, they're often pressurized into doing things they don't want to. And we can all see things like this. This is one such instance. The government stopped giving advertising revenue to a certain or a lot of Kashmiri newspapers. This happens in a lot of other places as well. This happens with corporate clients as well. In 2010, Tata stopped giving advertisements to a few who published dissenting reports about them. So, yeah, this is quite frequent. And now about literature and the gaps in literature. There have been no large-scale empirical work done similar to this. This is mainly because no one actually has data regarding this. Like, no newspaper actually says that, okay, like X amount comes from this company, Y amount comes from this company, which would make our life much more easier. And there have been prior studies which have been done with similar hypothesis. There have been studies on government ad influence in Argentina, corporate ad influence in US financial news, some studies about bias from ownership and political alignment. But all of these are really small in terms of not only sample sets, but also the event sizes. For example, the government ad influence in Argentina, it only looks at corruption and only the front page. It's about 1,000 data points. The corporate ad influence in US financial news only looks at fund suggestions, which is one page in financial column, and that's about 10,000 data points. And similarly, the bias from ownership and political alignment that only looks at ownership structures and news responses to one act by some companies, and that's about 113 data points. So you can see that there have been studies, but all of them are like severely limited, often to one event or like a few thousand subsamples. So this is where our main research objectives come in. So we wanted to first of all develop a scalable and language agnostic pipeline where you could process news images or like e-papers into a version where you could efficiently run some hypothesis, generate some insights about how advertising is being done, and also characterizing advertising patterns, like who is advertising, what are they advertising, when are they advertising, some of those questions, and also to eventually answer the question if such advertising expenditure correlates with editorial coverage. Like if you do pay more in advertisements to these newspapers, do they write more or positively about you? So as for the data, we majorly scrape data from these five major Indian newspapers. We pick Times of India, Hindustan Times and Telegraph for English, Dainik Bhaskar for Hindi, and Sakshi for Telugu. And the sources we primarily chose the sources based on readership and availability of e-papers. So Times of India, Hindustan Times and Telegraphs are the largest read English dailies in India. Dainik Bhaskar is the largest read Hindi daily, but in Telugu, Inadu is, but we didn't find few years worth of content for Inadu, so we picked the next best, which is Sakshi. We have about 12,000 editions, and edition being like one day, one city, one newspaper, one complete newspaper. Uh, and the final data set, after all the processing, has about 1.6 million articles and about 830,000 advertisements. And yeah, we also have some metadata regarding this, like original bounding boxes, Times of India, etc. They have their own set of annotations as well. We kind of have some of that data too. So this is a detailed breakup of how that data looks like. For example, we have from multiple cities as well. Times of India, we have from 4 cities, the number of editions, the number of pages. I think the number of pages comes out to around 200 plus 1,000 pages. And yeah, the number of articles and ads I've already described. As for methodology, what we did was we processed a single page at a time through an image segmentation model. We used YOLO V8s, which was the latest model available at the time. And we trained this on one of the publicly available datasets. So as I said, we kind of had metadata for some of these newspapers from Times of India and Hindustan Times. So we picked about 1,000 images from that, trained our own model so that we can annotate the rest where we didn't have ground truth data. And that model has a mean average precision of 96.8. And after that, now after running through the segmentation model, we basically have articles and ads as images, separate images. We just process those through OCR pipelines. We use a mix of three, depending on how the content style is. And later, if it's an indic text, we use indic trans2 to translate that content to English as well. As for OCR strategy, what we did was if it's indic text, then we primarily use Surya OCR. It's the best performing indic OCR. If it's English advertisements, then we use parallel OCR, which kind of is very good at extracting from an unstructured manner. So if you look at ads, right, it's not structured in any way. You see irregular fonts, irregular layouts, and parallel OCR is really good at extracting data from such content. And if it's articles, then we just use Tesseract OCR. It works well. It gives you data in reading order. So we just pick that. And this is how the process looks like. Just give me. So this is how one page looks like. And after you pass it through the YOLO V8 segmentation model, you basically get segmentation maps for everything. Like this is one segmentation map, which is an advertisement. This comes out as one segmentation map for one article. This is one such segmentation map for one article. And now that we have all of these, we just process those through OCR and translational pipelines. And now we have all of this data into text format. We know it's an ad or an article. We have data regarding what page number it was on. We have data regarding what was the area it occupied on the original page. Now what we wanted to do was identify if it was one of these two, either a government or a corporate ad, or government articles or corporate articles. So we just used a keyword-based identification for both. The companies chosen were based on how frequently they advertised in newspapers. There's Stan Media Research India's quarterly reports. Every quarter they publish who were the top advertisers in some of the sectors, and we just pulled those companies, generated some keywords for those, and used that to identify articles and ads. And this is a sample of how those keywords look like. Like if you see for Tata, it's quite encompassing. Like it has all of its subsidiaries, most of its popular brands, all of that. And this is like five. So we basically had like 40 companies, if I remember correctly. And the third part is we also wanted to know like what is the cost associated with some of these ads. And how we did that was since we had area, all we had to do was multiply that with whatever cost is associated with it per square centimeter. So you have rate cards like these. These are all again public knowledge. Uh, So for a particular source, for a particular city, the first and third and the last pages are kind of considered as premium pages. So they have a different rate, and all the rest pages are considered as usual pages. They have a base rate. So we can just multiply what page number, what city, what source that ad is from with this figure and the area, and we get like an approximate for how much it probably costed. Yeah. So now that we have some way of identifying who was in the article slash ad, how much an ad probably costed, and all of these data, we kind of can identify how much did government spend, how much did private corporations spend on advertisements. So government spent about $1 billion in advertising revenue for all of these newspapers, and private corporations were quite close. They spent about 890 million. And this is how the split looks for like first, third, and last page. And what you can see here is that private companies like to spend a lot on the first, third, and last page. You can see that they spend considerable amount on those three pages than the government counterparts. And same with the other pages as well. So you can see like the government doesn't mind using the other pages. And we can see this more later as well. So about 20% of all corporate ads appear on these premium pages. So these three pages contribute to about 1 in 5 corporate ads. Whereas in case of government, 97% of government ads appear on other pages which are not premium. And this is with regarding to area. About 30% of all corporate ad area is taken only by these three pages. So yeah, like if 10 square centimeters of corporate ads is there, then three of those will go to these three pages. The government is again not choosy at all. 90% of their ad area is on non-premium pages. But what we see is if anyone is advertising on a premium page, then they would likely use about half the page. Corporates prioritize visibility by investing nearly 1/3 of their budget on print pages. Like even the spending wise, right? You can see that about 1/3 of corporate spending is only on these three pages. And this is how that table looks like if you look at spending. But yeah. And also, what type of ads do they prefer? Like here, you can see that the CDF for government, it's about like below 0.1 is 85% of the ads, like 10% or like, uh, yeah, really small ads contribute to about 85% of government ads. Whereas if you see in the case of corporations, about 25, like near 0.25, there's a huge bump, which is basically a quarter page ad. Near 0.5, you can see a huge spike, which is basically a half page ad. And near 1, you can see another large spike, which is basically a full page ad. So corporations, they favor standard ad sizes. They look for quarter page, half page, or full page ads. Whereas in government ads, it's really small ads, but a lot of small ads. And also, we can kind of see some other interesting patterns as well. Uh, they have a particular strategic way of advertising. For example, Patanjali prefers Hindi newspaper than English counterparts. Educational institutions prefer first page ads and other interesting preferences. So even tech articles or like ads come on only like front page and full page ads. Some of those interesting preferences you get to see. And when are ads published? So there is a steady 35% page area coverage by ads annually. There have been some downfalls and some spikes. Like during the COVID-19 pandemic, there have been about 10% downfall in this page area. So about 25% of page area used to be ads then, but it gradually recovered by mid 2021. And also, it's very seasonal. You can see that the period from Diwali and New Year, you can see a spike in advertising area. And what is the content about? So we use an off-the-shelf Roberta-based transformer model. It's trained to associate one of these 8 tags to articles or ads. And what we find out is advertisements are heavily skewed towards business, health, and technology topics, whereas editorial covers a broader range. They have crime, public safety, politics, and all of the other stuff. And the reason we don't find a lot of lifestyle or entertainment based sources is we just use the main edition. We don't really consider the lifestyle editions or the sports edition or any of the other minor editions available in a daily newspaper. And now, when we want to answer the larger question, like does paying more or having significant advertising revenue to certain companies or newspapers give you the positive edge. We do it in this way. We first have a term called weighted ad ratio, and how we calculate this is basically a scaling factor multiplied by the portion of ad that occupies on the page. And the scaling factor is very simple. So we have this table, right? We just divide this entire table with the lowest number on this table, which is 546. So this scaling factor accounts for what source it's from, what city it's from, what page number it is from. It's basically a proxy for cost. We just wanted a proxy for cost, and this is a proxy for cost. And this is our X variable, and what our Y variables are basically sentiment and the count of articles, which mention a certain company. And how we calculate sentiment scores for all of the articles, we just use an off-the-shelf Roberta-based model again. The range is from -1 to 1. This is kind of important later. And we use a panel regression, and there's a reason for that. So this entire regression is really complex. Like there's a lot of terms which interact with each other, but a panel regression allows you to kind of account for all of these combinations. For example, I'll start with this and then we can move back. So basically, the first term YMNT is basically the sentiment or the count of articles for entity N, which is a specific company in a newspaper M, any given time T. We do this monthly. So we basically take all of the articles over a month regarding some company from a certain source. And that is the YMNT variable. And we have all of these other terms which capture other relationships. So the gamma MN kind of accounts for all of those newspaper and company interactions. So Times of India and Reliance might have a close relationship. So this gamma MN term accounts for that, but it might not have the same with other companies or other newspapers. The delta T term accounts for all of the time-based variations. Like as I said, Diwali to New Year is like a really positive time. They advertise a lot. So this gamma T term accounts for that. There's also an error term as well. Uh, so yeah, that is why panel regression is really important in this context because it captures variation over time with the gamma T variable uh, and also across entities. When you include newspaper company fixed effects, it accounts for that as well. And this is what is mostly used. So even in literature, panel regressions have been used to study this type of relationships. And what we find out is for government entities, a 1% increase in weighted ad ratio, basically the spending, correlates with about 0.073% point decrease. And this point is on a -1 to 1 scale. So, but when we account for newspaper and time fixed effect, what we find out is it's a bit more, uh, as in lesser, like it's 0.0084. But this is not as significant as the before study. So this is very weakly significant. And when we look at the number of articles, then initially it's significant and it's also large, like 0.58 times. Like initially, if you pay more, then what we found out is you will have 1.58 times the articles for government. But when you account for the newspaper and time fixed effects, then it's like not even significant. And this is how that table looks like. And the last column is what we are really interested in. Like if this relationship holds up in newspaper and time fixed effects, that's when we are really interested in. And this is for sentiment. And we can see that there is a negative relationship, but that is weakly significant. And in the case of count, it's not even significant. We can probably think of this as also the government is supposed to advertise in all of the major newspapers for their public postings, etc. So the newspaper doesn't really write positively or any gets biased by government as much. But when it comes to corporate advertisers, then we have really good results. What we see is a 1% rise in ad spending converts to about 0.0189 point increase in sentiment. And this remains significant even after accounting for newspaper source and time fixed effects. So in that case, it's like 0.0137. And this is all on a -1 to 1 scale. And also when it comes to count of articles, then it's about 0.22. So they'll write about 22% more articles about you if you keep paying them more. And this is how, after accounting for newspaper company and time fixed effects, the numbers look like. This is statistically significant across the scale, like accounting for any physics, they remain statistically consistent. And the degree lessens a bit, but yeah, like it's significant. And same in the case of count. So now that we know that if you invest significantly in advertising revenue in these news corporations, you kind of get, first of all, a positive outlook as well as more ads articles. What are the implications? So commercial incentives shape editorial decisions in print media. Corporate influence is stronger than government mandates, primarily since government review is guaranteed. But corporate isn't, because they can always take the business to some other newspaper if you write negatively consistently about them. And this also raises concerns for journalistic independence and democratic discourse. As I said, a lot of people still prefer print media as their first thing that they do when they wake up. A lot of people have trust in print media, but yeah, this looks a bit pessimistic. And we also have this data set and pipeline as resources for transparency and future research. This gives you an automated way to process a large chunk of data and generate these insights yourself. The main limitations are we are reliant on OCR methods and keyword rules, both of which have considerable error margins. Especially when translating as well, we can have some misclassified ads or partial data. We can probably fix this by using a VLM, but it's really large data, so you need to have really good compute to process this through a VLM. Also, our regression findings are correlational, they're not causational. Uh, Higher ad spending does coincide with more positive coverage, but you cannot prove causation through the data we have. The dataset is also limited to 5 sources and over a period of 5 years. A larger dataset could have more robust conclusions. The future work, you can always improve your accuracy for the OCR and keyword pipelines by using a VLM, expanding data. We only have 5 sources over 5 years. You can have more data, better experimental design, provided if you get access to some unique features which only newspapers have access to, you could probably design experiments in a manner where you could show causation instead of correlation and also more analysis. The data set is still underutilized. We do have all of this novel data on what page number, what articles, what ads, all of that, and even the images. But yeah, we do this style of study. And yeah, just a bit of conclusion. Like we introduced this novel analysis pipeline. You can analyze all of this data in a scalable manner. We have a comprehensive data set, 12,000 plus editions of Indian newspaper. We have this evidence that, as you saw, you often had to rely on hand methods on a limited data set to prove some of these hypotheses before, but now you could do it in a scalable manner. And this is also a cross-disciplinary contribution. This has CV, NLP, as well as CSS implications on it. And this is a part of my publication. This was published in Compass 2025. The conference is on July 22 to 25. So for acknowledgements, Prof. PK, it has been a long journey and it wasn't always too positive, but Prof. PK always gave that support and freedom to do whatever I like. Prof. Kiran, who had been guiding me on this project, this has been a year-long project. So that as well. Tejasvi Rohan and Prof. Ashwin, that was my first research project as well. I had to learn a lot of things, even get into research writing a bit. So it was all a very good experience. Precog and all the good folk who reviewed my content too many times to count, and Prof. Radhika Krishnan and Prof. Rajoshi Dev for reviewing and providing valuable feedback for the thesis. And these were just a couple pictures. That is Prof. Kiran. That is Prof. Ashwin. I spent about 5 months at Rutgers, and this was during website as well, where Prof. Ashwin and Tejasvi, our paper was also published there. So we got to meet him. And yeah, this was last year's farewell. So probably need to take an updated picture. But yeah. So that is the end. Any questions? Thanks.
Any questions from anybody else? Okay, so yeah, you want to Radhika, start off. Radhika, you want to go with your questions?
Yeah, I could. Okay. Harsha, congratulations. In fact, I'm surprised to say that you say you're new to research writing because actually the thesis on the whole is very well written. It's neat, it's concise, it's structured very nicely, and all of that. So I have some minor quips, but I'll come to that. But first, the known minor quips. Okay. Um, First thing is there is something in the analysis section. I think page 13.
Open the thesis.
Okay, if you can open your thesis, where the
Yes.
keyword identification for the government section, right? I I absolutely think that just the way one of the strengths of your work is that when it comes to corporate advertisements, you have been able to disaggregate it very well, right? You have given us very granular data on which company and what and so on. I think that is kind of sticking out like a sore thumb compared to what you've done with the government data. So you say
14.
that you have used certain
14.
keywords.
14.
Sorry, one three.
Just
Yeah, go on. We're just opening the page 14 in the thesis.
Okay. 13. It's
this
1 3 analysis
No, page
section,
14.
third paragraph.
14. I
One
think
three,
she's referring to.
third paragraph.
Yeah. Okay. Analysis section.
Third paragraph, keyword identification.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So there,
right.
you've said that you have not looked at political entities or parties. Okay. Now, I think that if you want to make a clear case about the nature of state advertisement and the nature of influence of advertising by political entities on newspapers, one will need to disaggregate this a bit. Okay, and it's not just governments, but it's large parties, all sorts of parties who might be in the opposition at some point of time, and so on. Okay, it could be, it could also be a lot of entities that are connected to the government but are not quite government. But that's a different story. That's very difficult to get. But I really think that the one thing that I wanted to ask you is it possible, for example, for government advertising to include, say, an opposition front page advertisement, right? An opposition party's front page advertisement, which has nothing to do with a particular scheme, with a particular program or something, which just says, all right, whatever, we are running some campaign, whatever, something. Okay. So I really think that this definition, if you could change it in the thesis, it would be great. And tell us how you have chosen government, because this is not going to sit well with a media studies person that you're not looking at political entities. If you can just sort of just explain that a bit, that would be nice. Next is page 16 and
So,
18.
so Radhika,
Uh,
just to be clear, what he has to do and what it means to finish. So, what you're saying is the definition of government should be clear in this paragraph.
Yes, yes, should be made more
Okay.
clear. And if you
Anyway.
are not including political entities, I think an explanation has to be given as to why, because this is something that in the media studies domain, people are going to classify as government slash state. Okay, because the difference
Okay.
between an entity in state and an entity outside of state, which will become a state entity in say 6 months time or whatever, is the distinctions are blurred. So all political advertisements are generally seen as political advertisements, including parties in opposition and so on. So all of that. So
Yeah.
so I don't want you to change that definition a little bit here. And then 16 and 18 is where my minor quiz is. Page 16 and 18. Um, have said that. Wait, page 16, figure 4.2, right? So the numbers here, 80,
Oh man, we're
88.4,
missing page
87.9,
15.
and so
Yeah.
on.
Okay.
Page 16, 1 6.
4.2. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Just
Figure
compare
4.2.
4.2. Yeah. So I'm trying to correlate the numbers that you have in the graph and the numbers that you have niche, and somehow I seem to see some, I don't know, some. Am I reading it wrong? I don't know.
uh, what
So let's, okay, can you make it bigger?
right.
I think she's saying that the numbers in the table, numbers in the text and numbers in the graph are not matching. Let's
Yes,
take
yes, yes.
with 88.4% of placements, where is 88.4?
Right. I think this is of, I think this should be the below one. This year, 88.4. I think I, yeah, probably misplaced a paragraph or something.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
so
this
you
is
just
88
it's
point.
just data. Huh? It's a small problem, just the data needs to be. And the other thing is, I would like apples to be compared with apples. So if you're looking at first page or first page, then compare first page of government and first page of corporations. Okay, here you have done this classic apples versus something for a reader. See, for a maths person like me, I'm able to do the subtraction very easily. So you have done
Right,
88.4, which is placements outside first, second, third, and the other case you're looking at premium pages, right? So it's the,
right,
I think it's the opposite entity that you are looking at.
right.
You get what I'm
So
saying? Am
one
I making
fix.
myself clear?
Yeah, yeah. Let's write down the other fix. Please fix the
Just make the
88.4.
same,
Yeah.
what you call category. That's all.
Fine to write all that above. Okay, that's fine. Okay, go on. Good.
Uh, Similarly, in page 18, just before you do how do they advertise, uh, the last the last paragraph says, taken together, these observations underscore a fundamental divergence in advertising strategies. Okay. Now, I'm not a statistician, but I think you can make this a little less fundamental divergence and say that there is
Okay.
this
Go
word
to page 18.
fundamental requires you to, yeah, page 18, last paragraph of
Yeah,
section
yeah,
4.2.
Right.
How do
yeah.
you advertise?
So just take that and reduce the value.
Instead of saying
Yep.
fundamental divergence, just say there is some, because the minute you say fundamental, people are going to ask for, a very significant distinction in percentages and so on. And you need to explain